you eat salmon much yourself at all, do you?
Occasionally.
You can boil it, you can roast it in the oven with butter.
Really?
Lovely.
You could also give somebody a queer thump on the head as well. It's quite a weapon, isn't it? 3 buckets of them knackered.
Oh. You and me would kill that there in about 2 days.
Kill me in 2 days.
No, it wouldn't kill you at all.
This is not the place for the passing traveller because there's no through road here unless you can swim or fly. And unless you stay a while, you'll have to turn around and go back the way you came. That's because these rugged hills and green vales and rushy lakes are ringed around on 3 sides by the glittering serpent of Mulroy Bay. And where I am now is between the waters in the west of FANAD Peninsula. How to imagine the shape of this land? Well, think of a giant one-winged angel floating on the sea, gazing up at the sky. Got it? Well, we're walking on the wing, sometimes tracing the skeletal structure beneath the downy surface, at others feeling the feathery edges dipping and rising with every ebb and flow of the tide. And all around are heavenly sights to be seen. In the days before motorised transport, between the waters was truly isolated. If you didn't have a boat or access to one, you would walk northwards for several hours and then begin your journey to your intended destination. Mary Ellen Freeld grew up where the wing was attached to the angel's shoulder in the days when Gaelic was first to the tongue. Traban, Carrick Ur and Kinlacken are the names she uses to describe the glorious stretch of strand at the end of her garden. After a night of big storms, Mary Ellen tells me she has sometimes woken to find a young seal sitting in the backfield amid the bewildered cattle. In her childhood days, Mary Ellen and her family would have regarded these sandy bays and rocky flags as both playground and larder. Mary Ellen, these are what give this particular wee beach here its name. This is Port na Moyjug.
Port na Moyjug.
Port na Moyjug. The Moyjug, have I said that right? And these are
these are Moyjug, you know, the little things, you know.
Yeah.
They would have a little fish inside them.
They would have had when they were alive.
They're alive, but like they're empty now.
And these are cowrie shells.
Cowrie, yeah, that'll be the English, yeah.
Cowrie shells.
Cowrie shells.
They look like, when you turn them, they look like sort of pearl barley turned upside down.
Exactly, and when they're dry, you know, they're beautiful.
They
you can varnish them and use them for decorating lampshades or what have you.
You see those bottles often done up,
that's right, they put a plaster of something.
White stuff.
White stuff and then they stick that into it.
Right. Now, you're collecting these purely to be decorative things?
Oh, that's all. I mean, there'd be no other use for them.
Whenever you were a youngster and collecting around the beaches here, it would have been for food as much as anything else, wouldn't it?
Well, that would be the periwinkle, you know.
Periwinkles?
What we call wilks here.
Yeah.
That would be the periwinkle, but they're a grey shell.
Right.
Same shaped shell now, I would say, as
more or less.
These, you know.
And they were the things you literally had to winkle out the wee fish.
Well, you would put them into hot water and
yeah.
bring them to the boil, and then they'll sort of start coming out of the shell, you know.
Yes.
And you get a pin, and then you take off the cap.
That's the wee
tiny little brown cap on the top.
That was the inedible bit.
Aye.
I mean, the cruel thing about seafood was that you had to boil them all, unfortunately, when they were all still alive.
Well, most shellfish, yes.
Most shellfish, yeah.
They would be very dangerous, you know, for laying the shells.
Yeah.
But I suppose it is cruel. It ends you the day instantly, really.
They die instantly? Well, you know, maybe they don't have any feelings
like a lobster. Oh, I'm sure they have.
You think they have?
Oh, if you put your finger on them, they'll move, so they must have some feelings.
But they're nice?
They're nice, yes.
Well, listen, we'll not go into the ins and outs of the morality of eating shellfish, but the point is that in days gone past, people depended on an awful lot.
Oh, certainly.
And leaner times, didn't they?
Oh, yes. During the famine, I mean, that's what kept them alive and on the seashore was the seafood.
Yeah. Well, how much would your menu at home have depended on seafood? Would you, at certain times of the year, would you have had a lot of it? Would you?
So, yes, we would have had lots of seafood. Now we would have dulse, carrageen moss, and sloke, which is found on the rocks.
We brought this thing down along with us from your house.
Right, yeah, that's sloke now.
That's sloke.
Yes.
It's like something that a policeman would use. and it's just as nearly as heavy.
It is, yeah.
Now, I'll tell you what that looks to me like, Mary Ellen. It looks like tightly wound dulse. Is that essentially what it is?
It's like tobacco leaf, isn't it?
Well, I haven't eaten it.
It's not, it's sloke. It grows flat on the rock.
You just tear it up and eat it like that?
You roll it.
You roll it?
And you roll it up. That's why it's called a cassog.
A cassog?
Yeah.
Which is Irish
From
for
the word cast,
twisting, right? And how, is that the original length there? Have you?
Well, depending, if you have somebody who's very good at making them. My husband's a great cassock maker, so that's why you can get them that length.
Did he make this one, or did you do
He
this
did,
one?
no, he made that.
And do you think this is good for you?
Oh, very good, yes. Full of iodine. Good for your blood.
Aye. It's also good to just chew on, really.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't carry it around like that. I mean, you obviously wouldn't
No,
have this in your pocket and pull it out again, would you? Cut a piece off.
Saw a piece off it.
Saw a piece off it. Right.
Because it is tough now.
It's quite hard.
It certainly is.
Yeah. Right, that's just one example. There are different kinds of seaweed that you would have gathered along the rocks, and especially at low tide, I think is the best time for gathering.
Now, dulse would be the big
Dulse
one.
is the big one.
And that would be sold in chemist shops and sold in grocer shops and that, you know. Lots of people would have made a living here on gathering dulse, you know, and carrying moss.
Mary Ellen's husband, Dinfriel, the expert cassock maker, has first-hand experience of people making part of their living, at least, from seaweed of a certain type. From way back in the 1800s, right up to the middle of the 1940s, the gathering and processing of kelp was a major mainstay of the local economy. Slatmara is the Gaelic name given to the oarweed, and huge tangles of the stuff would fetch up all along the coast. Nowadays, it rots. Back in earlier times, people with pitchforks would wade waist-high in the water to land the valuable cash crop. Well, valuable only after enormous hard work. About 40 tons of wet Slatmara would make just 1 ton of usable iodine-rich kelp. Having been dried out and shrunk, the rods would be placed in kelp kilns. These were basically depressions in the ground, about 15 foot long and 18 inches wide, lined with stone. And there they would be burnt.
And you know, the smell come from out of that kelp, that burnt smoke.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable how nice it was.
How nice it was? I thought you were going to tell me it was an awful smell.
No, it was lovely.
What was a sort of scent? A scented smoke?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it was indeed.
What was it like? Does it remind you of the sea or earth or whatever?
I still have it in me, sort of in my nose, you know, and mine, what it was like, you know, but to describe it to you, not too well I could.
Well, do you know what I'm going to do now? Such as your description of it, I'm going to set fire to this later on, and I'm going to see what it smells like. I hope it smells out. But anyway, they burnt it. And what happened after it burnt? I mean, did it just to ashes or what? Or did it melt or what?
It melted, you see. When it got the heat and was burned, you see, it ran out in lumps like plastic.
Yeah.
You know how plastic runs there when it melts?
Yes.
Well, the kelp would be the same.
Right.
And big lumps. But you had to let it lie for about 2 days, you know.
To cool down or
to cool down.
It became solid then?
The second day, that would be too warm to bag, you see.
Sure.
The second day you turned it. It was lying in its shape, you see.
Yes.
The length of the kiln.
Yeah.
You turned it, 2 men with a shovel in each end of it. You turned it right round. That was to cool it, you see.
Right. And in that grey, shiny plastic form, it would be shipped off to the iodine factory. But the Slatmara had many other uses. During the war years, it was used on the fields as fertiliser. And here's a wee trick Din showed me. You know when the handle of your favourite knife gets damaged in some way? Well, you just take your length of sea rod like this. Right. Oh, look at that. Yeah.
That's the centre of it there.
Right.
You would just catch the knife and shiv it, drive it up through it.
Drive it up through that there. Right.
Because that won't no bother at all.
Yeah,
you see,
yeah. It's kind of soft at the moment.
Yeah. And leave it sitting close to the fire.
Right.
And about that length.
Right.
It would shrink a bit, you know. You need to give it about that, you know.
Sure. Because you're going to cut it bigger in order to get it smaller.
That's right.
Right. So the shank will go into that.
That's right.
That becomes your knife handle, in other words.
That becomes your knife handle. It'll finish up about the thickness of that one of them there now.
Wouldn't be as narrow as that, would it be?
Oh, well, it depends, you see. It wouldn't be, but it'd be very near it.
Very near it,
very near it. No.
And that would be as hard.
Oh, you'd never take it off.
Never take it off
no.
again?
Oh, you'll not take it off, no.
So that would shrink around it.
That's right, that's right.
And it wouldn't fail after. This is the old schoolhouse at Ballyhearin, said to be the capital of Between the Waters. And although we're somewhat off the beaten track, this area does have its links with historical personages of some note. Francis McCamey, widely acknowledged to be the founder of Presbyterianism in America, came from these parts back in the 1680s, as did the father of Elizabeth Patterson. Elizabeth who? Well, you might know her better by her married name, Mrs. Bonaparte. Yes, she was Napoleon's sister-in-law, married to Prince Jerome of Westphalia. So it's quite possible that the emperor himself was familiar with the term entre-deux-mers. Yes, entre-deux-mers, or between the waters, the name McKamey is still well known and highly respected. As a small child, Anne Deany and her neighbours grew to depend on the ferryman, Charlie McKamey, who was really their only reliable link with the outside world. Over the boat, as they called it, was their place of worship, their shop, and to a large extent, their social life.
And he wasn't of our religious persuasion, but I think he understood the dedication of his Catholic friends and neighbours to the Sunday Mass, and no matter how bad the weather, he would always attempt it. I think there were very, very few occasions, maybe in very inclement weather in the depths of winter, but apart from that, very few occasions when he didn't make the crossing.
And this was a rowing boat?
It was a rowing boat.
Right, so he must have been a big, strong man.
Yeah, he was a strong man, but on a Sunday when he had two boats, a bigger boat and a small boat. And on a Sunday, some of his passengers, the men, rowed the boat across, and he more or less directed operations.
I see.
So he always had that help, and they were very willing to help. And mind you, he wasn't doing it to make his fortune.
No.
Because people paid an absolute pittance, I think, for it, like even allowing for inflation and all the rest of it. And then when you were crossing at other times, because we did cross at other times, it was our link, if you like, with the outside world. We crossed maybe going to shop in Rosnickhill, or to get the bus to go to Kerrykeel, Milford, or later on when I was going to college in Letterkenny. I remember going across the boat, taking my suitcases with me and going to boarding school. You needed to carry quite a bit with you. Walking then from Morris to Ballina, where we picked up the bus suitcases. Yes, my mother came with me, and we shared the burden. And that's, I mean, I'm just giving you that as a personal example. It was our link with the outside world. And in those days, I think, I remembered one time paying Charlie threepence, what we called
for yourself?
Yes.
Yes, for yourself.
And I think in later years people paid sixpence.
Right.
And I mean, how many crossings would he make in order really to cover even his time? He was a farmer, a small farmer. And when we were coming back, supposing we went across, got the bus to go to Letterkenny for some reason or other, and that would be rare because we didn't go very much.
Right.
He would know you'd gone across and you'd be coming back at a certain time because he knew the bus times. He'd be watching out for you. And if you came unexpectedly to Morris, and he was out in the fields, you waved, you shouted, you whistled. If it was getting dark, you jumped up and down. And anyhow, he always kept an eye out.
Right,
and he knew if people were loitering, so to speak, over there, that they wanted to get across. And I would often see him leave his work in the field, come down, walk down that laneway there, get into his boat and come across. Like it was really a laborious work. And I mean, it was just the common mode of transport. It looks now today as if it was extreme hardship. But in those days, like, because we took it for granted, we didn't know anything else really.
Here in the townland of Ballina, close to the village of Tamney, has to be one of the oldest educational establishments in the entire country. This is Tamney Robertson National School, and it's been in daily use from as early as 1664 right up until the present day. It started off as a single-storey school, and then in the late 1700s the upper floor was added. That is where the classroom was located, and the pupils would have to file up these steps to the classroom. There was very little chance of the teacher being late in those early days, because the ground floor was where the teacher actually lived. The records show that from the latter part of the 19th century onwards, this was a very busy little school indeed. Pupils would be crammed in here, 12 to a long desk. They would sit on the windowsills and on the floor. But even that wasn't enough, because the school had to operate in 3 different shifts. From 9 o'clock until 1, the junior school were taught. From 2 o'clock until 6, you had the middle school. And then from 6 o'clock right through until 10:30 at night, the young seniors had their lessons. And that was very likely after a hard day's work on the land. But what about the standards of education achieved? Well, such was the school's reputation for the 3 R's and for bookkeeping skills that there was very real competition among businesses countrywide for the services of FANAD clerks. My only wonder is how they ever manage to pay any attention at all to their lessons, with so much to see outside their window. Some of those pupils may have come over the boat to school, having spent the day doing work like this. Between the Waters was once famous for the quality of its seed potatoes, which were exported from here to places as far away as Cyprus and Egypt. Today, Michael Herity is only growing what he will use himself. Those he can't use immediately, he will store by this age-old method of pitting. I can vouch for the fact that it's back-breaking work, but the promise of freshly baked scone bread and homemade jam afterwards is a wonderful motivator.
No, that's the type of sweet potato that you really want.
Right.
That size there.
Well, what are you looking for? That's the size of it, right?
Yeah.
And does it have to have so many eyes or anything
Well,
like that?
no.
No, it doesn't matter.
That wouldn't make any difference.
Okay, right. But in this case anyway, we're just gathering them all. I have to point out that your bucket's a lot smaller than mine, so
No,
yours fills.
No, but I was noticing that. I was wondering what you were doing, because my bucket's full.
Your bucket's full because mine's a lot bigger, Michael. That's the only reason. See this carry on bending down? Now, I'm only doing it for a few minutes, but already I can feel the wee twinge in the back. You were saying, if you had a choice of kind of work on the farm, this is the kind of work that you would do all the time?
That's what I would like to do.
Seriously?
Yeah.
You don't feel the back pain at all?
Well, you feel it for the first week.
After that, you
Not
just
the first
don't know.
week, you get used to it.
You get used to it. I think we are getting used to it. But I enjoy it. I was saying to you earlier on, when I was young, my father grew spuds. Nothing I enjoyed more than digging up the spuds. It was like buried treasure. You know, it was like digging gold out of the ground or something like that.
I know.
You know? And you never lose that sensation, you know?
No, oh, but it's a lovely job.
Isn't it? What gives you satisfaction? The fact that they've grown so well?
Grown so well.
So that's the idea. You build up with those.
Well, the soil is what keeps them fresh.
Really?
Yeah.
What's the idea of the rushes? The rushes to keep the water off them, is it, or what? Or?
Well, probably, but the idea of the rushes are that if you, no matter how much rushes you put on, if you got frost, you won't keep the frost out. But the frost, you clay them then on the top of the rushes, and the frost will still go into the rushes.
But not into the potatoes?
But not into the potatoes.
Oh, right, I see what you mean, right. So really the rushes is a kind of insulation or something?
Insulation, I would imagine.
Right.
I'd imagine so.
But you were telling me earlier as well, you've clay over the top of those rushes now, but you normally wouldn't put clay right away over them?
No. You'd at least 2 weeks.
2 weeks?
2 weeks, let them dry out.
So they can still dry out through the rushes?
They'll still dry out through those rushes.
Yeah. So rushes are very useful, man, indeed, aren't they, really?
Oh, very useful.
What would you do if you had no rushes around here? I mean, thankfully you've got a
Thankfully
field.
we've got rushes there, but everybody's trying to get rid of the rushes.
Aye. But surely they're needed for a job like this.
Well, they're needed, but they're nobody putting them in pits right now. They're all bringing them.
They're all bringing them all in.
Yeah. Sadly enough, very few people are growing potatoes now, and that's the sad part.
But this is the traditional way of drying them out and of keeping them.
Keeping them.
Now you're putting them in there now at the start of November. Yeah. How long would they keep like that for?
I can leave those potatoes there now to spring.
To next year?
Next year.
And they'll be as good as they are now?
They'll come out dry and better than ever.
There's not enough work on Michael's farm these days to give employment to his own 3 sons. They've turned to farming of a different sort. Patrick Sweeney manages this fish farm on Mulroy Bay, chosen for its shelter, its tidal flow and its depth to farm salmon. Each of these 10 nets, stretching 10 metres down into the depths, contains about 30,000 fish, and between them they consume about 10 tonnes of feed every day. At £700 per tonne, that is some investment.
So you've got to make sure that the fish eat every grain of it.
So £7,000 a day is going into this water here?
To feed the area. So this is only one site.
You feel like going to the seagulls and say clear off here as well, because they're getting a free ride on it?
The quality of food has improved tremendously. When we started, first food was about £200 a tonne, but the quality was very, very poor.
Yes.
But the quality has developed to an extent now where it's very, very high quality, and hence the
cost of it as well.
Exactly. Yeah. A lot of the problems that occur in fish farming are caused by bad hygiene. The secret in the whole thing is hygiene and good management. Keeping nets clean, keeping your site clear, making sure that there's no debris around, all this sort of thing. Very, very early on we discovered that we should be the guardians of the environment ourselves. If we pollute the water, we won't have fish. So it's in our own interest to keep the water as pristine clear as possible.
What kind of things can you do to make sure that that happens? I mean, not farm too intensively would be one thing. Would that be the case? No.
Well, you can farm. I mean, people would call this intensive farming as such. The secret is to fallow a site after a generation of fish has been grown there. What we do is we'll grow a generation of fish here. Similar to agriculture, we'll rest the site then for 6 months before we put another crop of fish into
basically,
it.
you see it as another form of agriculture, really, in a sense.
It's an extension of agriculture in that a lot of the people we would have working here, 99% of the people working here come from an agricultural background, which suits us ideally for the situation we're in. We're dealing with livestock, which have got to be fed every day. The farmer would be used to looking after his cattle, feeding them, looking after them health-wise as well. So we do exactly the same thing here, and we find that people from an agricultural background adapt very, very quickly to what we're doing. Furthermore, they can carry on their little bit of agriculture. Agriculture is declining in the area at the moment, so they can still carry on a little bit of agriculture with their sheep and their cattle as a sideline.
However assiduous Patrick Sweeney is in trying not to harm the environment, there will still be those who criticise fish farms on both environmental and aesthetic grounds. It's always going to be controversial. But I'm only a visitor. How does local man George Peoples feel? He can see the entire fish farm from his front window. Right. As you were growing up then, so a lot of people would have been really the main employment or source of employment around here would have been either the sea or else farming. Would that be the case?
Farming, small farmers, yes, and a lot of them supported themselves on seed potatoes and some cattle. Just the seed potatoes were a big thing in this area, but that's all died out too.
That's all died out as well.
Died out.
Right. So we're sitting here not too far away from the fish farms, and I would imagine that would be one of the main sources of employment in this day and age.
One of the main sources of employment, and great benefit to young people. It has cut down a good bit of emigration and that sort of thing, and it's vital to this area that fish farm is allowed to carry out its function.
So without the fish farm, in other words, you were saying there'd be a lot of young people having to leave the
area?
area?
There would be, I'm sure 150 of them would be gone anyway.
So it's, I mean, some people will say, I'm sure you've heard the arguments about fish farms as well. Yes. Some people will say environmentally they're not very friendly and they're a bit of an eyesore or whatever, but that doesn't hold any water with you?
Not really. Any industry is not going to be totally environmentally friendly, but the fish farm, as far as I'm concerned, is doing very little damage, if any.
Looking out there now, would that have been any different looking
back
in the past?
No, exactly the same. The view would be the same as it was about 100 years ago.
So your house is now looking out over there, is that your family home as well? Was it
well,
you've been reared there?
The 3 generations were there.
3 generations, okay. Right. And it's going to continue to be in the
well,
peoples by peoples?
Hopefully, but that's in the lap of the gods.
That's in the lap of the gods.